I'm Eloan, and my mom threw my birthday cake in the trash and told me I was just an expensive mistake. I wish I could say that was the worst part, but what hurts more is how normal that moment felt. How I didn't even flinch when my name disappeared from her will, or when my sister used my bank account like it was hers. They said I was dramatic, that I overreacted. Then one day, I played a recording of my mom calling me a burden she wished she never kept, in front of 100 people. And that's when everything changed. But did it really? Or did they just get quieter about the way they cut me out? I should have known something was off the moment I saw the table. Seraphine's celebration dinner looked like it had been ripped out of one of those lifestyle magazines Callista always left half open on the coffee table. Linen napkins folded into swans, candles that weren't scented but smelled expensive, and name cards written in the kind of calligraphy that screamed, "Professional help." Everyone had one. Except me. Mine read, "Staff +1." I stared at it longer than I should have, half expecting someone to snatch it away and replace it with my actual name. But no one did. I took my seat and smiled like it didn't bother me. That's what I was best at, smiling through the sting. "Wine, Elle?" Seraphine's voice rang from across the table. She already looked half tipsy, even though we hadn't toasted yet. I nodded, reaching for the glass. My fingers were still stiff from the shift at the bakery. 10 hours straight rolling dough, boxing pastries, pretending rude customers were just tired. The kind of work Seraphine wouldn't last 5 minutes doing, not with those fake nails and her endless appointments. "You look exhausted," she added, the smirk curling at the edge of her mouth. I swallowed the burn in my throat. It was a long day. From the kitchen, I heard my mother's voice, Callista, just low enough to pretend she didn't mean for me to hear. "She really needs to find her own place. It's getting pathetic." Seraphine laughed. Not the fake kind, the genuine, belly-deep one she saved for when she felt superior. I didn't say anything. I pushed back my chair and went to the kitchen, not because I needed anything, but because I needed space. From the dining room, the laughter kept going. I gripped the edge of the counter and stared at the half-empty wine bottle. I wasn't invisible. No, worse. I was easily ignored. That sentence lingered like smoke in my mind, curling around every corner of my gut. I turned back and walked through the hallway, glancing at the photo wall as I passed. Seraphine's graduation photo sat dead center, framed in gold. Mine? Off to the side, 2 sizes smaller, crooked. "Dinner's ready," Callista called. Back at the table, Callista began the usual pre-dinner speech. "We are so proud of our Seraphine. Promotion to project manager at 29. It's no small feat." Everyone clapped. I did too. "She's always had a mind for leadership," Callista continued. "We knew from the start she'd go far." Seraphine raised her glass. "And if I hadn't, well, I guess Mom could have shipped Elle off to take my place in college, right, Mom?" Laughter again. Callista didn't deny it. She just waved her hand. "Well, thank God you made it. That would have been tragic." I clenched my fork, hard enough for the metal to squeak against the plate. My smile didn't falter. Not on the outside. Inside, I felt like I was slowly folding in on myself. I remembered the day vividly. Senior year. I had wanted to apply to a culinary school in Chicago. I printed out brochures, filled out the FAFSA, even talked to one of their admissions counselors on the phone. "We can only afford one tuition," Mom said, "and you know Seraphine's got real potential." I nodded back then. I remember nodding so hard I gave myself a headache. Of course, she deserves it. I meant it. At the time. Tonight, I realized something else. I wasn't the backup plan. I was the fallback no one ever intended to use. Dessert came out. Chocolate torte with raspberry drizzle. Everyone got a slice. Except me. No one noticed. Not even the woman who had made it her life's mission to orchestrate every dinner, every seating chart, every perfectly curated photo op. I sat there, smiling again, like I always did. My stomach was tight, but it wasn't from hunger. Sometimes, the wound doesn't come from a blade, I whispered to myself. It comes from the people who pretend they didn't cut you. After dinner, I walked quietly down the hall to my room. the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses fading with every step. I sat on my bed, the one with the quilt Grandma made that no one remembered. I reached under it, pulled out the art folder I hadn't opened in months. It felt heavier than I remembered. I opened it. Empty. Every sketch, every charcoal-smudged memory, gone. I didn't even have to guess who'd taken it. The absence of that drawing, my state-winning piece, the one I'd poured my entire senior year into, wasn't some accident. It was a choice. I stood there for a few seconds, hands trembling, the folder still resting on my thighs. My mouth was dry, but not from shock. I wasn't surprised. I was confirmed. I walked back down the hall, slow enough to keep myself from bursting. The sounds from the dining room had faded, just the clinking of silverware and the faint hum of Seraphine's playlist echoing through the vents. When I passed the bathroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked dull, glassy. I looked like someone who had long given up expecting decency. I found her in the living room, scrolling her phone, legs curled under her like a teenager. The way she always acted when she wanted to look harmless. "You go through my stuff?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. Seraphine didn't look up. "What are you even talking about?" "My folder. The drawing from the state exhibit. It's gone." She finally raised her eyes. "Maybe it got lost. It wasn't that special." Not that special. My jaw clenched so tight I felt the pressure in my temples. I didn't say anything else. What was the point? She knew exactly what she'd done. I walked into the kitchen for a glass of water. The overhead light flickered, casting quick shadows against the fridge. That's when I saw it. The trash bag, half full, leaning lopsided in the can. The smell of chocolate and raspberries lingered faintly, the remnants of the dessert I never got. And there it was, torn in half, folded, then shoved deep into the mess, still stained with raspberry drizzle, a smear across the lower corner, like someone had tried to clean their fingers on it. The drawing, my drawing, ripped down the center. I didn't breathe. I couldn't. I leaned over, staring at it, the lines of charcoal still sharp despite the mess. I reached for it, pulling it out gently like it was something fragile, like maybe if I was careful enough it would still matter. Flash. A memory hit me like a slap. Callista, years ago, standing in the kitchen, with a checkbook in one hand and a spatula in the other. "Art doesn't feed you, Elowen," she'd said without even turning around. "Better learn something useful." I stood there in the present, holding the proof of how much she meant it. Later that night, I climbed into bed without changing. Sleep didn't come, but something else did. An unfamiliar sense of detachment, like my body belonged to someone watching from outside. Around 10:45 p.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. "Hello!" I answered, voice rough. "Hi, may I speak with Elowen Callista Harper?" My full legal name, used only on one document. My stomach twisted. "This is she," I said cautiously. "This is just a courtesy call to confirm the terms of your $6,000 signature loan." The man on the other end said cheerfully, "I didn't take out any loan." A pause. Then, "We have your signature on file, as well as confirmation from the listed email and phone. The account was approved yesterday." I sat up straight, heart pounding now. "Read me the email address." He did. It was mine. Except the secondary contact email wasn't. It was Seraphine's. "There's been a mistake," I said. "That's identity theft." The voice on the other end softened, just slightly. "You'll need to file a dispute through our fraud department. Do you have access to a fax or secure email?" I hung up before I exploded. I stormed into the hallway, barefoot, half blind with fury. I didn't care if I woke anyone. This was my name, my credit, my life. Callista met me in the kitchen, wearing her robe, sipping from a wine glass like we were about to chat about weather. "You used my name to apply for a loan?" I demanded. She didn't flinch. "You live in my house. You eat my food. I needed help. It's just paper." My voice caught. You always overreact," Seraphine interrupted from the hallway. That's why nobody trusts you. And there it was. The script. The lines they always defaulted to when I dared to draw a boundary. I walked past them, out the back door, down the steps into the garage. The air was cold. My breath fogged in front of me. The space where I used to paint still smelled faintly of turpentine and sawdust. There were no canvases left, no easels, just boxes of old holiday decorations and busted garden tools. I sat on a crate and looked at the wall, now bare where my pieces used to hang. A blank, dusty expanse. Like nothing had ever happened here. They're not just erasing me, I whispered into the silence. They're rewriting me. I leaned back, eyes closed. Something knocked loose from a shelf above. I turned and caught it before it hit the floor. A VHS tape. Dusty. Labeled in neat black Sharpie. Dad? 2002. Graduation message. I stared at it, heart thudding. The tape weighed more than it should have. I carried it upstairs, my fingers clutching the edges like it might vanish if I blinked. The attic was colder than the rest of the house, smelling of insulation and forgotten cardboard. I moved a few boxes aside until I found the old VCR player tucked behind a crate of yellowing photo albums and tangled Christmas lights. I didn't hesitate, plugged it in, slid the tape in. The screen flickered, static. Then, my dad's face. Younger, clean-shaven, his tie crooked, like he'd gotten dressed up just for the camera, and didn't quite know how to do it right. "Hey, Peanut," his voice said, and I froze. No one had called me that in over a decade. He looked right into the lens. "You're probably watching this after something big, maybe a graduation, maybe something even better. But no matter where life takes you, know this. You were always my light in a dark house." My throat closed. It was like someone reached inside and twisted my lungs. The man on the screen looked so alive, so real. He laughed nervously, scratched his chin. "Your mom and I, well, we didn't always agree on everything, but one thing I never doubted was that you were meant to be here." He smiled again. "You shine, Elle. Even when nobody says it, even when they try to dim it, keep shining." The tape cut off. I sat there in the half-light, knees to my chest, tears hot against my cheeks. I hadn't cried in front of anyone in years. But up here, with no one to see me break, I let it happen. That night bled into morning. I didn't sleep. I laid on the attic floor, wrapped in a blanket from one of the boxes, eyes tracing the beams above. At sunrise, I went downstairs. Callista was already in the kitchen, making coffee like it was any other day. She didn't look at me when she said, "Can you drive Seraphine to her spa appointment at 10? I didn't move. "No," I said. She paused, turned halfway toward me. "Excuse me?" "I said no," I repeated, more clearly this time. "Not today. Not ever again." The silence stretched between us, heavy. She stared like I'd grown a second head, but I didn't flinch. I didn't backtrack. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water and walked out. I ended up back in the garage, again. That space had become my sanctuary, even with its peeling paint and drafty corners. I pulled my notebook from the old workbench, flipped to a fresh page, and wrote across the top. Unforgiven things, I started the list. Painting torn, name used for debt. Kept because of Dad. I left the fourth line blank. Not because there was nothing to write, but because I knew more was coming. You don't always burn bridges. Sometimes you just keep receipts. Back inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. That kind of calm that feels fake, like everyone's waiting for a storm that hasn't been announced but is definitely coming. I passed the dining room and noticed a wrapped gift sitting on the buffet table. Gold paper, white ribbon, meticulously done. It looked familiar. My stomach tightened. I picked it up, turned it over. The handwriting on the card was mine. To Mom from Elle. But the tag now read, in a new label stuck hastily on top, To Mom from Seraphine. She didn't even check the handwriting. I was erased in my own wrapping. A week passed, and I didn't say a word about the gift. I didn't need to. That moment spoke for itself. There was no misunderstanding it, no way to twist it into anything but what it was. Callista had looked at my handwriting and decided it didn't matter. Seraphine's name mattered more. Saturday morning came with the smell of burnt toast and lavender-scented floor cleaner. I was scrambling eggs when Seraphine sauntered into the kitchen, wrist extended like she was modeling for a commercial. "Check this out," she said, twisting her arm under the light. A bracelet, delicate, silver, custom-etched with "Always Loved," the same one I had spent months saving for. I recognized the design instantly. It was supposed to be Callista's birthday gift from me. The one I had wrapped in gold paper and white ribbon. The one that got relabeled. "Mom loved it," Seraphine added. "She said it's exactly her taste." I nodded slowly. Of course she did. I didn't eat breakfast. I couldn't. I rinsed the pan, wiped the counter, and stepped into the hallway. That's when I noticed the new family portrait hanging above the console table. Larger than the last one. Everyone looking polished, posed, proud. Except I wasn't in it. But the dog was. They had cropped me out and filled the space with our golden retriever, Bella, posed in her Sunday bandana like she'd earned the spot I never could. My stomach turned. I looked closer. Same backdrop, same day. The image had been altered, cleaned up, edited to perfection. "Really?" I asked aloud. No one answered. Just Seraphine's laugh echoing from the kitchen like a sitcom soundtrack. I walked away, quietly. Dinner that evening was chicken marsala and awkward silence. Callista took her usual place at the head of the table. She talked about politics, her new neighbor's roses, and some charity auction she wanted Seraphine to help with. Not once did her eyes meet mine. Midway through her monologue, I set down my fork. "I don't need a place in your photo," I said, clear and calm, "but I won't keep living in a house where I'm only acknowledged when it's convenient." She didn't stop slicing her steak. "Oh, please. You're still here, aren't you? Talk is cheap, Elowen." Seraphine grinned into her wine glass. I didn't reply. Not then. I just stood, took my plate to the sink, rinsed it, and walked upstairs. That night, Seraphine posted a picture of the new family portrait on social media. Caption, "Family first, always." A few people commented, "Where's your sister?" One reply stood out, "She's complicated." That one stung. They don't kick you out of the family with keys. They do it with captions, with omissions, with silent edits. I sat at my desk and pulled open the top drawer. The list was still there, folded but not forgotten. Unforgiven things. Painting torn, name used for debt. Kept because of dad. Gift erased, photo replaced. And now, I added, warning ignored. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was just ink, but it was mine. Downstairs, I heard the clatter of dishes and the hum of the dishwasher. A regular night for a family I no longer belonged to. I walked into the kitchen once the noise died down. No one was around. I opened the fridge, pulled out ingredients, and set them on the counter. Flour, eggs, butter, vanilla. I mixed them slowly, deliberately, each movement calming, grounding. I didn't bake for them anymore. This wasn't about Callista or Seraphine. It was about reclaiming a piece of me they hadn't yet stolen. When the cake was done and cooled, I frosted it with a smooth layer of white icing. Then, using blue piping gel, I wrote in clear, even letters, "Not a mistake." I stared at those words for a long time. The frosting had barely set when I slid the cake into the box. I didn't use a carrier or cover it with plastic wrap. I wanted the writing visible. If it smudged, it smudged. It was still mine. Later that evening, the house buzzed with the kind of forced energy reserved for obligatory family gatherings. Callista's birthday. Her kind of holiday. The dining room had been dressed to impress. Fresh flowers on the table, the good silverware, chairs arranged just so. She sat at the head like a queen presiding over her court, pearls snug against her throat, hair perfectly set. Extended family filtered in. An aunt from St. Louis, a cousin who always smelled like cologne and car leather, even Pastor Rick from the local church, who had a knack for smiling too hard. I walked in holding the cake. Every step felt heavier than it should have, not because of the weight, but because I already knew. I already knew how this would go, and yet, I still walked in. Seraphine glanced up from her seat, eyes immediately narrowing. "You baked again?" There was mockery tucked inside the question, but I ignored it. I placed the cake gently at the center of the table. The candles were already lit on another one, a store-bought double-tier monstrosity covered in gold sprinkles. Callista didn't even glance at mine. I cleared my throat. "This one's from me." She paused. Then, like she couldn't be bothered to hide her disdain, she leaned over, lifted the lid, stared at the neat blue piping across the white surface. "Not a mistake." Her gaze turned to me, flat, cold. "You really thought I'd eat that?" She stood, lifted the cake, and walked straight to the trash bin. She didn't hesitate. She didn't sniff it or examine the texture. She dropped it in like it was garbage. "You were an expensive mistake, Eloan," she said, wiping her hands on a napkin. "This just confirms it." There was no gasp, no outcry, just the clinking of glasses being quietly set down. A cousin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Pastor Rick cleared his throat and looked away. Seraphine raised her wineglass. "To Mom!" she chirped. Everyone murmured a weak, fragmented toast. I didn't say a word. My body was still. My expression didn't change. But inside, something broke loose. Not shattered, shifted. The worst pain isn't the slap. It's realizing no one flinched when it landed. I turned and walked out without touching my plate. The hallway was dim, the only light coming from the lamp near the bookshelf. I passed it without looking at the family photo that no longer included me. In my room, I pulled open the drawer where I kept the list. I didn't even reread it this time. I just ripped it out and drew a long final line across the bottom. "This ends here." I grabbed my overnight bag from the closet, stuffed in some essentials, wallet, charger, 2 changes of clothes. My hands didn't shake. My breath stayed steady. I wasn't fleeing. I was leaving with full awareness. Before stepping out, I walked back into the dining room. Everyone had moved on. Someone had started passing around slices of the store-bought cake. I cleared my throat, loud enough to earn silence. "If I'm a mistake," I said, "then let this be the first one I undo." I looked directly at Callista. "I won't be here when you need someone to blame. You can write me out of your photos, your stories, your legacy, but you won't write me out of myself." I left the room in silence. Not one fork tapped a plate. As I stepped outside, the air was crisp, the sky a soft charcoal. I reached the bottom of the driveway when Seraphine's voice rang out behind me. "Don't come crawling back when you can't afford rent, Elle." I didn't turn around. 1 week later, I was sitting on the bare floor of a rented room above a thrift store. The walls were thin, and I could hear the buzz of someone's daytime television through the floorboards below. My mattress was still on the ground. No headboard, no dresser. Just me, some folded clothes, and a borrowed sense of peace. My phone buzzed beside me. I expected it to be a spam call or another well-meaning text from Indira checking in. Instead, it was a notification from the bank. Overdraft. I blinked. Then I opened the banking app, already knowing something was wrong. The screen loaded slowly. When it finally did, I saw the list of transactions, dozens of them, spa visits, boutique shopping, Uber rides, sushi bars, charges that weren't mine. But they were on my account, my name, my number. I sat still for a moment, letting the weight of it hit. Then I started scrolling, tracking dates, locations, patterns. All familiar, all local, all Seraphine. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I got up, walked over to my duffel bag, and pulled out my laptop. When it powered on, I went straight to my email, searched for scholarship. I hadn't done that in months, maybe years. A result popped up, one I hadn't noticed before, 6 months old, marked red. "Congratulations on your scholarship approval." I clicked it open, heart thudding. There was a forwarded header attached, sent from my email. To Seraphine's. Attached to it, a reply. We've decided to go with another option. Thank you, from S. Harper. I stared at the screen. The timeline lined up too perfectly. That was the same month she'd posted about getting support from a local sponsor to take a strategic career development course. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. One I never saw coming, because I'd always been busy assuming they couldn't be that cruel. I opened a fresh document. I copied my bank statements, screenshotted the transactions, included the merchant names, the timestamps. Then I added the forwarded scholarship email. I saved everything to a flash drive and labeled it in all caps. TRUTH. I printed a second set and slid it into an envelope, sealing it tightly. 2 days later, I walked back into the Harper house. No warning, no call ahead. The moment I stepped inside, Seraphine looked up from the couch, phone in hand. Well, look who crawled back. I didn't answer, just walked past her and into the dining room, where Callista sat reviewing a stack of donation cards for the foundation gala. I placed the flash drive and envelope on the table between them. What's this? Callista asked, glancing at the label. Proof, I said. You might want to sit down. They didn't. Seraphine leaned forward, opened the envelope, and started flipping through the printouts. Seriously? It's not a crime to use your sister's card, she scoffed. We're family. No, I said evenly. You're a thief, and you used me as your buffer. Callista shifted in her seat. Do you really want to destroy your sister over a few numbers? She asked, voice calm but firm. She already destroyed herself, I replied. I'm just holding up the mirror. I waited. They didn't say a word. Not an apology, not even a defense worth mocking. I turned and walked toward the door. Seraphine called after me, voice venom-slick. You think this makes you better? You're still the leftover daughter. I paused, hand on the doorknob. At least I'm not counterfeit. 3 days passed. I didn't hear from Callista or Seraphine. Not that I expected to. What I didn't expect was how fast the smear campaign would begin. I was walking past the community center bulletin board on my way to grab a coffee when I saw it. The flyer. Annual Harper Foundation Honor Brunch, recognizing future leaders. There was a picture of Seraphine, grinning like a pageant winner. Underneath, bold text listed her as the primary scholarship recipient for the year. My name was nowhere. The same scholarship I'd been approved for, the one she blocked me from claiming. Erased. Again. My breath caught, but I didn't touch the flyer. I just stood there, watching mothers pass by with strollers, some of them pausing to admire it, some nodding like they already knew Seraphine was something special. Later that afternoon, Indira messaged me a screenshot from a local Facebook mom group. The post was short, anonymous-looking, but signed. Concerned parent. Please be cautious about your children spending time with my youngest. She struggles emotionally and has unpredictable behavior. Some issues are hereditary. Signed, C. Harper, I read it twice. Then once more, in case I was hallucinating. Indira followed with a text. Thought you should see this. I called her. We met at Bessie's Diner, a spot we used to love in high school. She slid into the booth across from me, eyebrows already tense. My mom said your mom called her, she whispered. Said you've been unstable lately. She warned her to keep distance. I sipped my coffee. So we've moved from sabotage to slander. Elle, what the hell is she doing? I didn't blink, trying to finish what she started. I went home and opened my laptop. I pulled up everything. Bank statements, the scholarship email, the flyer photo, the Facebook screenshot. Then I wrote a summary timeline. Each lie, each theft, each insult mapped in black and white. I called the folder Harper Lies Volume 1. I created an email list, church board, the school district's PR contact, the donor who had once asked me to speak about youth mentoring, the assistant at the mayor's office who had emailed me about volunteer work years ago. Before I clicked send, I paused. Then I opened Instagram. I uploaded a photo of the ruined cake, mine, the one she tossed. Caption: "This is what a mistake looks like, and this is what that mistake does when she's done being quiet." No hashtags, no mentions, just truth. I hit post. Then I sent the email. That night, I was scrolling through job listings when a new message popped up in my inbox. "Dear Ms. Harper, we regret to inform you that your scholarship has been revoked due to concerns raised about your character. The funds have been redirected." No signature, no contact, just one last blow, delivered without ceremony. I stared at the screen, numb. Not because of the money, though I needed it, but because they finally said it out loud. What they'd been whispering for years, what they'd trained everyone else to believe. They were building a version of me that never existed, a distortion, and they expected me to accept it. But I wasn't done. I woke early that Saturday, hours before the sun reached over the treetops. My phone was already in my hand before I opened my eyes. I stared at the calendar reminder blinking across the screen. Harper Foundation brunch, 10 a.m. I hadn't been invited. But I didn't need an invitation to crash a lie. The sky was gray, thick with the kind of Midwest humidity that clung to your skin before noon. I pulled on black jeans, a navy blouse, and the pair of boots I only wore when I needed to remember who I was. I packed a flash drive and slipped it into my back pocket, then took one last look at myself in the mirror. Calm, controlled, not loud, but ready. I stood in the back of the crowd, just far enough from the white tent's main entry that no one noticed me. Folding chairs were arranged in perfect rows. The local press had a small corner staked out with microphones and camera gear. Pastor Rick blessed the brunch with the same speech he'd used at every civic event since I was 15. Nothing new, nothing true. Seraphine stepped on stage like she'd been born to it, a blush pink blazer hugging her shoulders. She spoke confidently, gesturing like a woman who'd earned her platform. "We're here today because of integrity," she began, "and resilience. Values our foundation holds dearly." I slid one earbud in, let her voice fade beneath the sound of my own heartbeat, and waited. 3 nights earlier, I'd found it. An old voicemail my phone had saved automatically. It was Callista's voice, brittle and bitter, left for one of her childhood friends. "I only kept her to avoid a scandal," she said. "Regret it every day." I'd clipped the audio, boosted the volume, cleaned up the background noise. Then I built a single-slide presentation deck. Title screen: "The Cost of Silence." As Callista rose to close the event, her voice syrupy as ever, I stepped forward. Some heads turned. Most didn't notice. Until I spoke. "Before this event ends," I said into the handheld mic, "I want to offer a different kind of clarity." The sound guy looked confused. I nodded toward the laptop hooked to the screen. "Play this." A few seconds later, the tent went still. Callista's voice poured out across the speakers. Not the polished version, not the public mask. She was a mistake, a regret, a burden. I watched the words land, watched the smiles vanish. Some gasped. One older donor woman near the front clutched her pearls in that cliché way Southern ladies still did. Seraphine stood frozen, lips parted, but no words came out. Callista's jaw slackened, color draining from her face. I took the mic again, calmly. "They called it a brunch," I said. "I call it a confession booth." Then I walked off stage. One person clapped, then another. Not many, but enough. One donor stood and walked out, his face pale, mouth a tight line. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I walked out into the driveway, past the catering trucks, past the valet station where teenagers in vests handed off keys. My phone vibrated once. I ignored it. You don't have to scream to make them hear. Sometimes all it takes is pressing play. That evening, after I got home and showered, I sat on the edge of my bed and scrolled my inbox. A new message blinked at the top. "Dear Ms. Harper, we are reviewing the integrity of your foundation leadership. Please prepare a formal statement regarding your involvement with current scholarship decisions and administrative communication. It was addressed to Callista, and while they reviewed her name, I reclaimed mine. By the time Monday rolled around, the Harper Foundation had gone radio silent. No press releases, no cheery Instagram stories, just a frozen webpage with a blinking under review banner across the top. Callista hadn't posted in days. Seraphine scrubbed her feed clean, 10 photos gone in a single afternoon. Even her signature pink-filtered selfies disappeared. If silence could feel like a vacuum, this was it. And yet, in the quiet, something heavier settled over me. It wasn't celebration, it wasn't victory, it was stillness. The kind that follows after a house fire, when you're left staring at what's left, wondering if the structure can be rebuilt, or if it should just be torn down. I tried to return to normal things: grocery shopping, laundry, reading a mystery novel I couldn't follow past page 12, even made muffins, though I forgot the sugar. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just moved. On Wednesday, I had a notary appointment to update my will. Just a formality, really. But while I was there, on impulse, I asked if public trust documents were searchable. The clerk looked me up like I was asking about the weather. 5 minutes later, she printed out the Harper Trust Index. Seraphine's name was listed. Twice. So was Callista's niece in Florida, who hadn't visited in 15 years. My name wasn't there at all, not even as a backup, not as a secondary, not even in the fine print. The clerk looked up like she was expecting me to argue, to ask if maybe they'd missed a page. Instead, I just nodded. "Thank you for your help." I drove home with the windows down and the radio off. That night, a call came through just after dinner. Unknown number. "Is this Elowen Harper?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "This is Riverside Hospital. Your mother was admitted this afternoon. You're listed as her emergency contact. We need you to confirm medical proxy." I stood up, already grabbing my purse. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. 20 minutes later, I stood at the front desk. I gave my name. The nurse scanned the screen and frowned. "I'm sorry," she said. "You're not listed anymore. Her file was updated last month. You're not authorized for updates or visitation." I blinked once. But I was the contact. "She replaced you," the nurse said, more gently this time. "It happens." I stood there for a beat longer, long enough to see my own reflection in the glass partition. "There's a finality to being erased," I said to no one. "You stop knocking on doors that were never yours." Back home, I pulled out a box from under the bed. Inside was a weathered copy of our old family photo, the original one, the one before the edits and the cropping. I took a pen, drew a clean line through my face. Not out of anger, not revenge, just clarity. Then I taped it to the wall next to my desk. Not hidden, not displayed, just there. Like the truth tends to be. Later that week, I got a call from Sable. "You good?" she asked, voice warm but careful. I sat on the floor, back against the wall. "I'm not in the will. I'm not at the hospital. But I'm alive. I'm whole. That's enough today." She was quiet for a second, then said, "That's more than most people get." After we hung up, I checked the mail. Mixed in with ads and utility bills was a plain envelope, no return address. Inside was a blurry photo of my cake from the brunch, the one that read, "Not a mistake." On the back, in unfamiliar handwriting, "You were right to speak. Thank you." Anonymous. The envelope with the anonymous photo stayed pinned to my fridge for 3 days before I touched it again. Every time I walked into the kitchen, my eyes drifted toward it, tracing the faded outline of the cake that started it all. Not a mistake. The words still clear beneath the blur. The message on the back was unsigned, but I didn't need a name. Truth didn't always need an author. 2 weeks after the brunch, Aurora was still humming with whispers. People had stopped asking me how I was. They didn't offer sympathy. They offered silence. That suited me just fine. Callista hadn't shown her face at the library since the email from the community board leaked. A simple notice went up on the town's bulletin. All Harper-sponsored events are paused pending review of donor conduct. The statement didn't include details, but it didn't have to. The Harper name wasn't what it used to be. Seraphine, always addicted to spotlight, had gone nearly invisible. 10 posts scrubbed from her Instagram. A TikTok account quietly deactivated. Rumor had it the local fashion boutique paused their influencer contract with her. I didn't gloat. I noted. Then, one afternoon, I got a text from Sable. "Check your inbox. You'll want to sit down." It was a video file. Hospital room lighting. Callista lying in bed, pale but propped up, speaking into the camera with uncharacteristic softness. "Alawan took care of me," she said. "I owe her more than I can say." Timestamp, March 12th. Unedited. Uncut. It had been wiped from the Foundation's site the day Seraphine started her new mentorship campaign. I downloaded it. I didn't change the file name. I didn't even trim the beginning. I just uploaded it to a private server and emailed the link to the community boards, the library, the school district, and a dozen others who had received the brunch invite weeks ago. No caption, no context. Just a reminder. You don't have to rewrite history. Sometimes you just recover it. 3 days later, a youth mentorship award ceremony was held at the high school auditorium. Seraphine stepped on stage in a navy dress, lips glossed, smile tight. I wasn't there, but I watched the live stream from home. She'd barely reached the podium when a voice called out from the crowd. "Didn't Alawan Harper run that entire cooking program last year?" There was a shuffle, a camera shake. Seraphine froze. Someone else added, "She organized every week. You didn't even show up." A teacher walked over, whispered something. Seraphine nodded stiffly. She was escorted off the stage, not forcibly, not rudely, just removed. Later that night, I got an email. "Alawan, we'd like to invite you to speak at our next community panel, Resilience, Truth, and Community. We'd be honored to hear your story." No apology, no explanation, just a shift. And that was enough. Not revenge, not vengeance. Visibility. At midnight, I sat by my bedroom window with a glass of water. No music, no phone. Just night and breath and the soft hum of the city in the distance. That's when I saw the car. Callista's. Parked across the street, engine running, headlights off. She didn't get out. She didn't knock. She just sat there for almost 5 minutes, then slowly pulled away. But for once, she didn't lie either. 2 days later, I stood in front of my bakery just before sunrise, keys in hand, watching the condensation collect on the inside of the glass door. The flour line still looked small from the street, but it felt massive to me. It was mine. Every screw, every shelf. I unlocked the door, turned on the lights, and stepped inside. The first hours were quiet. A few regulars stopped by. Mr. Jeffers from the barbershop down the block, a young nurse on her way to the clinic. I kept my head down and my hands moving, flour on my elbows, cinnamon in the air. I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. You don't always need applause to know something is working. You feel it in your bones. Around noon, I noticed a thin envelope slipped under the front door. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single folded sheet. The handwriting stopped me. I'd recognize that looped capital I anywhere. I won't undo what I did, but I see it now. That may not be enough. I understand if it isn't. No name. Just the weight of a sentence Callista would never say out loud. I didn't cry. I didn't ball it up. I slid the note into the back of my journal, behind old grocery lists and sketches from recipes I never published. I didn't text her. I didn't call. Instead, I walked over to the chalkboard wall near the register, the one where I usually wrote weekly specials or bad puns. Today, I wrote this. Forgiveness isn't about letting them in. It's about letting yourself go. Later that week, I hosted my first free baking class for local teens. It wasn't fancy, just two long folding tables, a handful of measuring cups, and a speaker playing Motown hits from the 70s. We made scones, mostly because they're hard to mess up, but satisfying when you get them right. One girl named Hannah burned a whole tray and looked like she wanted to disappear under the counter. I smiled and handed her a knife. "We don't waste mistakes here," I said. "We just add frosting and call it rustic." The room erupted into laughter. So did Hannah. That night, after wiping down counters and restocking flour bins, I stood alone in the back office, staring at the bare wall behind my desk. There were no family photos, no certificates, no reminders of a past I didn't want to frame. So I put up a picture someone took of me on opening day. I was in my apron, arms folded, flour on my cheek, smiling. Not for the camera, but because I meant it. There's no frame big enough for some wounds, but there's always space for your own picture. Just as I flipped the sign on the front door to closed, a knock came. Not on the glass, but from behind me. The back door. A courier in a blue jacket handed me a small square package. I signed, confused. Inside was a cake box. Plain, white, no bakery logo, no embellishments. Written on the lid, in slanted cursive. For the daughter I never honored. Mom. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, staring at the cake box as if it might say something else if I gave it enough time. The handwriting on the lid was unmistakable. Callista's. Careful, slanted, oddly graceful for a woman who rarely wrote anything by hand. For the daughter I never honored. I didn't open it right away. I made tea first. Chamomile, the kind she used to insist I drink when I was upset. Then I sat at the table, the box in front of me, and only then did I lift the lid. Vanilla. A simple single-layer cake with pale blue frosting piped in neat letters across the top. You were never a mistake. I was. The words hit like cold water. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were quiet, precise, measured. Like she'd planned them for weeks, but couldn't speak them aloud. Tucked into the inside flap was a note on lined paper. Folded, no envelope. I won't ask to come back. I just wanted to say what I couldn't when you were near. I wish I had made different choices. I hope you keep baking. No apology, just acknowledgement. I read it twice, then set it down beside my mug. Sometimes they don't apologize to make it right. They apologize to release themselves, and that has to be enough. I didn't call her. I didn't write back. I lit a candle and sliced a single piece of the cake. Plated it. The rest I left untouched. Then, with hands steady, I wrapped that one slice in parchment paper. On the outside, I wrote, "For the woman I became, not the one she raised." I didn't sign it. The next morning, I walked it to the post office, mailed it with no return address. 3 days later, it arrived. I knew because Indira called me from across town. "Your mom got something weird today. Looked like cake." Her face went white. Later, I heard she opened the box in silence, read the parchment, and folded it carefully before setting it aside. She didn't cry, didn't call, but she didn't throw it away either. That afternoon, I walked outside and updated the chalkboard sign in front of my bakery. The usual scone special was wiped away. In its place, I wrote, "Every scar is a recipe, and every recipe a beginning." Customers didn't ask what it meant, but one man nodded as if he knew. I walked back inside, tied on my apron, and preheated the ovens. A new batch needed starting. She gave me life, and pain, and silence. But I gave myself purpose, and for the first time in years, that's the only name that matters.